Hey, listeners.
Hey, listeners.
Shit. If you haven't joined Stitcher Premium yet, now's the perfect time. Stitcher Premium gets you completely ad-free episodes of hundreds of shows like Comedy Bang Bang, W2F with Mark Maron, and Bitch Sesh, a Real Housewives breakdown. You also get 21,000 of hours of exclusive content.
You also get 21,000 hours of exclusive content. I'm sorry, you whiffed it. I take over. New exclusive originals like Freedom with host Scott Aukerman, Lauren Lapkus, and Paul F. Tompkins. That is a little too much heat for one podcast. Are launching every week for Stitcher Premium members. If you love podcasts, you are missing out. When you listen to ad-free eps and Stitcher Premium, your favorite podcasters get paid. Help support your favorite shows and join Stitcher Premium today.
For a free month of listening, go to StitcherPremium.com and use the promo code Crucible. Crucible. That's the code. StitcherPremium.com is the website. Go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Crucible Radio, the podcast for all things Destiny 2 PvP. I'm Bones.
I missed it.
Destiny 2 PvP.
Before we all began competing to see who got to do the most fun part of the show, we were discussing my favorite, probably not, my favorite musician to talk about, Bruno Mars, and shared some interesting Bruno Mars facts, which you will find at the very end of the episode. They're all 100% true, by the way.
Very real.
But we're going to save that for the end because, oh my God, we've got so much stuff to talk about up top.
Yeah, we took 2 weeks off, and they were probably like the worst 2 weeks off we got.
Yeah.
Right?
Weird timing. You got to see behind the scenes. Yeah, you got to see a Bungie interview. And we are not the only Bungie interviewing game in town now, which, to be honest, is a huge relief. But I thought this was a pretty good one. I hope y'all enjoyed it. But as these episodes were playing, things were happening. Big Destiny things were happening in the Destiny world. And it's called...
Where do we even start? Forsaken. We don't even have to go to a TWAB. We can just be like, hey, a thing.
A lonesome road.
No. Okay, so they killed Cade.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Straight up.
Destiny is super dark and edgy now. Deal with it. Get used to it. That's what it's like.
Bones, can you do your best Liam Neeson Taken impression?
No, I can't do a Liam Neeson at all.
Oh, come on.
That's such a...
I have a very special set of subclasses that
you're so close. You need a little bit more like, I smoked a half a pack of cigarettes, not a full pack.
There's midichlorians inside of you. That's what gives you the force. And your dad was never real.
No,
don't ask me about it.
You are Darth Vader.
I'm sorry, young Anakin Skywalker. Your dad was Darth Vader. I'm your new dad, Qui-Gon.
Did you guys hear that there was a George Lucas interview and he revealed what he saw as the new trilogy ought to be like a Fantastic Journey style look at the thwill or the dwill that are the
it was going to be a microbial trilogy. It was going to be Osmosis Jones, the Star Wars trilogy.
And they're the ones calling all the shots. Like the whole thing takes place at bacteria scale because your Anakin, he's just a vessel for a whole bunch of really important bacteria that no one has been paying attention to.
Yeah, so if you're looking for this interview, it's George Lucas and James Cameron sitting down. So just blow your brains out first and then move on with it. Anyways, Forsaken.
James Cameron has very much expressed how he wants to see the demise of superhero films. Thus, he is dead to me.
I get it, I guess. I just don't agree with James Cameron on anything. So
who cares? James Cameron's dumb. James Cameron would be like, you know what? I don't think it's cool that there's 9 new supers coming into Destiny 2 with Forsaken. He wouldn't like that. It's too superhero crap.
Yeah. If you guys saw the Future Man treatment of James Cameron, it's spot on. He lives in a massive mansion with a house robot who can't stand him anymore. All right. So we saw this thing. We got to look at Gambit. We got to look at weapon slot changes. Random rolls are a thing.
Oh, and if you were curious, we're going to cover the crap out of Gambit. because you can kill a guy with a guy.
Yeah, that's kind of our deal. But probably more than that. Look, we all saw the same Vidoc. We all have been parsing through this thing looking for little fun facts. This is also the first week where the NDA has been lifted. And Swain, you can tell us what went on at the community summit. So, okay, man, just like set the scene.
So mostly what happened at the summit was good times, chill vibes.
Yeah.
No, I obviously I didn't get to go for both days, which is a huge bummer because on the first day is when everybody got to play the new weapon slot changes and Gambit. And I got to hear about it secondhand that night. Obviously, like I still got to know all the things ahead of time. And I showed up at the bar Thursday night and Noosk and Hamrick were still there. And they wanted to talk about things so bad. I was just like, hey, tell me everything that happened today. I want to know it all. Don't leave out any details. And they were like, okay, so here's the thing. PvEVP. And I was like, what? What did you just say to me? But then they went on to explain the mode and how it's got like an invader, and I was just like, okay. What else? And they're like, oh, weapon slot changes. You get a bow. And I was like, a bow? How do I keep this secret within me for that long? Like looking at my NDA and I'm like, there's a burning bows and I can't tell anybody about the bows and it's too much. So yeah. So
that pressure was too much for some to resist, but Swain, you held strong. Good work.
No, I mean it was fun. I wish I would have been there to play it. Looking back on it, but we'll get to play it at Guardian Con coming up, which is exciting. Get to be there with my friends. So I spent most of my stuff at the summit on the second day, which was playing stuff for the Warmind. And there were some like breakout sessions with Vicarious Visions and the Sandbox team. And there was two different groups. Like they kind of broke everyone into some people were in the auditorium, some were in the mocap room where they had setups in both. And a team would come in, they just kind of like shoot the shit with us and kind of say, what do you think about this thing? And there was a little bit of a semblance of an outline that they kind of wanted to hit. They wanted to hit all the big concerns. Obviously, random rolls, weapon slot changes, how people felt about the things they played. I definitely heard all about Hamrick talking to the day one crew and giving his thoughts on what he thinks random rolls would be. And it got shot down. It even got shut down by Noosk. So Noosk was like, this is not going to be right. It wasn't just like the fact that one perk makes the random roll, that it got shot down. It was a little bit nuanced as to how it would be applied and how you would control it. So, the biggest thing I want to say, like a kind of a warning though, was that, because it happened in April, and there was a ton of different people there, like nothing was unanimous. Like there definitely wasn't like, yeah, everybody like lifted each other up on each other's shoulders and said, yes, this is what everybody thinks. They did a good job of pulling people from like all different, sections of the community. Like Lost Souls, he was like a forum guy. He spends a lot of time in the Bungie forums. And someone like T1 Riot, like I got to play some Warmind with him, and that was fun. People like Lucky Buttwipe. There was a few other people that haven't played in a while, like Ramez was there. They definitely brought people in from all sorts of the community, like people that are casual, people that were hardcore, people that play raids, people that play PvP. It wasn't like kind of a big, like, oh, these are the biggest names, and we brought all those people in. I personally was trying to see it from the casual player's perspective because that's how I tend to lean. It's a little bit more casual because of my work. Like when I do get on, I like to be able to enjoy the whole game in some aspect. I don't want to feel like I fell behind too far, because Destiny, when you fall behind, it sucks, and you feel like you're missing a piece to be successful, which I don't like. So that bled into giving feedback on like random rolls. I definitely didn't want to be like grinding like a Grasp of Malik before. I didn't want to have to translate to like a DFA. So if I did 50 Nightfalls to get a DFA, I don't want the one I get on 50 to be like Grave Robber on it and be like, oh, well, what a giant waste of time that was. But like I said, it happened in April, and because everybody was so varied on the responses, like I know that Cammy like stood up in front of like a very PvP heavy group and held his ground on the fact that he didn't want completely like everything to change around to back to D1. And he was very adamant about it. And I definitely got a few pieces of feedback from the devs saying like, oh, Cammy was like, he expressed his opinion and he was firm about it, and they really respected the hell out of that. But because it was different and because it wasn't unanimous, I wouldn't be surprised if you find what they take away from it influencing something a little bit different than what everybody thinks. So taking the feedback of random rolls and being like, okay, some people don't want a heavy random rolls thing. Like, I don't want this to I don't want it to be Destiny 1 again, where I never get an Eyes Luna. Like, there's a chase there, but there's maybe a path to it. I don't know how they're going to execute it. Obviously, I haven't played it with the new setups, but they're going to be tuning and changing this thing until September. Like, Newski even replied to a tweet of mine the other day. Like, ammo economy and the way things work are going to be like the witching hour. They're going to be doing this right up until Forsaken drops, like making sure it's perfect. So if someone else from the summit is saying like, this is the way it's going to be, I highly doubt it.
I mean, there's definitely that part. Like, this was, we're talking about a release that's coming out, in September?
Yep.
Is Forsaken? And it's June now. And you've been sitting on this for a while. Like, the build you played was before Warmind, right?
Yep. We went there April 19th and 20th.
420, bro.
So 2 months ago.
So everyone at the summit was stoned, am I right?
I mean, it was Seattle.
Very legal there.
Well, us plebeians finally got to see what's up with all this stuff that you guys were chatting away about. Like you said, some randomized roles was a topic of conversation, and we saw Greg Pang in the Vidoc say that that's coming back. They mentioned very briefly that there's a masterwork sort of thing where we get to tweak our guns even more, which I think is awesome. I've loved the masterwork function since that came out. But we got a little bit more finally in the TWAB about how weapon slots are going to work. And this is, wow, quite literally one of the biggest topics the community's ever really revolved around and wanted to discuss. So here we are. And like, it seems very clear that this isn't entirely done yet. The terminology, exactly how the ammo is going to work out. But from what I can gather, here's what's going down. We've got 3 slots. Instead of a kinetic, an elemental or an energy, and a power slot, we have 2 quick slots, 1 and 2. And from what I can gather, there is still a kinetic quick slot and a energy quick slot. Now, the gun types that can go into these 2 slots are primary weapons and what we used to know as special weapons. The placement of some shotguns and grenade launchers or swords seems to be up for grabs, but it seems like the grenade launchers and swords and rocket launchers will be staying in the heavy slot. So we almost have to use all of the terminology now to really understand this.
I'm so confused.
So there are now, so think of it as we've got the D2 terminology and the D1 terminology. So we've got the kinetic and energy slots, but we've got primary and special weapons, and they can go in either. So if you have a kinetic shotgun, a kinetic special weapon, it will go in your first quick slot. If you have an energy shotgun, an energy special weapon, it'll go in your energy second quick slot. So that's what they were saying. You can do 3 shotguns. And I really think they're just referring to Acreus in this case. So Acreus being so strong, it really feels like they're just going to say like, no, you stay in heavy. Otherwise, that thing is just nuts. So you've got an Acreus and you've got a kinetic special weapon and an energy special weapon. Then we get to the ammo. Hamrick used the old terms. We don't know if that's finalized at all. So just for the purpose, we're going to use primary ammo, special ammo, and heavy ammo to match the guns in those categories. So green ammo, special. We now know that as energy, but it's going to charge your special weapons. So fusion rifles, shotguns, snipers. Doesn't matter where it is in your slots. If you have a shotgun that's a special weapon, it takes special ammo. So they're all hype about the 3 shotgun setup, but doesn't look like that's just going to have full uptime. Why do anything else? Because all of your, or at least 2 of your shotguns in that case, will be drawing from the same ammo source, the green special ammo. So if you have 2 shotguns in your quick slots, that ammo gets split into 2. That's how I'm picturing it now. So yeah, you got 2 shotguns, but it doesn't sound like you're going to get like 8 rounds just because you picked up a brick.
Said like you're going to be resulting to punching people if you want to run that setup.
Right.
All right. Swain, does this check out?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, when I talk to, I'm not gonna quote people because they were definitely just informal chats, but it was mostly looking for this like optional, like make the slots optional and make it so that people can kind of play the way they want to play within those optional spots. Like make everything kind of float around in those 2 areas, and then make your heavy or power be like your very hard hitting, like very not rare, but like not all the like the uptime very low on your last one. And they felt like they wanted to create that in Destiny 2 immediately. But what we ended up with was that what we got was like, hey, you're going to get primaries as your options in these slots, and we'll move everything else to the power ammo.
So what's the breakout for our current power weapons today? Like we saw the 3 shotgun build there. So that means that we've got them, like shotguns exist in every slot now, or are there some that are powers like,
so
how does that work?
May have, like I said, changed from when I talked about it at the summit. But Noosk wanted us to know that like, hey, in your power slot, we're going to keep the really effective stuff there. Okay. So you end up with your like your one-shot grenade launchers staying there. The rockets staying there. Really effective heavies like Acreus would stay there. I think he also mentioned linears staying in that slot as well because of the way they play into PvE. But everything else that was left would be broken out from there. And then each of those things that were broken out from there, I think they have, they'll be given spots within the 2.
Okay, so
my
like shotguns,
you can't run like 3 really hard hitting snipers because I don't think the hard hitting sniper would be an option in slot 1. in your optional slot 1.
Okay,
Same
so
thing
I've
with
got a bunch of
shotties.
shotguns today, right? So they're all currently in the power slot. Some of those are going to move to what's currently the kinetic slot.
I also don't think they're going to take the too much of the old stuff. I could be wrong. And this is something that I never talked to them about at the summit. But I think I would think that they're not going to take everything that was in the past and shuffle it around too much.
Gotcha.
They're going to try and move forward with new things that fit this, setup a little bit better.
Okay. Lot to digest here. Was this something that you got to play test at all?
I did not.
Just sort of based off of talking to people about it? I mean, we've heard some impressions from other sort of people who attended the summit, since the NDA got lifted. But what was sort of the vibe? What was the chatter in terms of what people were saying about their time with it?
I think the lack of chatter at the summit about that specific topic made me feel like it was the right move, because everybody was enamored with all the other stuff, like the new supers and talking about bows and weird things that they saw, or specifically Gambit. Everybody wanted to talk about Gambit. But I think everybody kind of landed on the feeling that this fits this era of Destiny really well. Specifically, it fits really well into Gambit, is what the feedback I heard was. So we'll see how it translates to PvP, and even further, how it works in PvE. But I have a feeling if the ammo is tuned correctly, the way it drops within the world, special and heavy ammo, I think this could be a really good solution, giving you the option to play D2, or you can go back to D1 and try and exist within the sandbox as your own thing. It'll definitely be a layer of it's going to be a layer of customizing that I don't think everybody wants. They kind of want to slap it all together and roll with it. And maybe that's just that's the year 1 build. People are just gonna give me hand cannon, shoddy, sniper, or hand cannon, shoddy rockets. People will do the easy path. But then I think it opens up a whole new realm of people that want to find their own playstyle and really craft something special.
Okay. I'm going to have to think about this. So next topic up. You already kind of touched on this sort of, just all the different opinions in the room. But what can you tell me about random rolls? And I'm curious because that was something that Hamrick talked about on the interview of we had an idea. We weren't sure how people would feel about it and kind of introduced it like that. Was that the random rolls that he was referencing in that story?
Yeah. So that happened day 1, the chat of random rolls. And to me, it seemed like it was if you had multiple people within the Sandbox team present ideas, we're going to go do a round robin and 6 people have an idea for a solution. And we all just got to see Josh's solution. Whereas I'm sure other people within the team had what they thought would work well, especially Dusk. He definitely shut down Josh's thing real quick. But it was to him, it was oh, well, I thought it worked, but very obviously it doesn't work for these people. It's nice to be able to see that. And that interaction between players and devs, it was they got to see both ways. They got to see how this type of player feels about something, and we got to see the limitations of development. Oh, you can't do that within this sandbox because of this. Or they would kind of break out and be oh, we didn't think about that. How do you feel if we did this? And they would give a very specific, parameter within, how something would work. And random rolls was definitely often talked about over the 2 days. And I don't think they came away with a solid solution, but they definitely had a path that they could go.
Well, I have faith that they're going to come up with something that definitely takes into account what people are asking for, and so I want to make sure that my viewpoint is established. I like the fixed rolls. I like the grind of random rolls, but I think this might merit a hot take, Andrew, if you wouldn't mind. There it is. Thank you, Andrew. The super duper every single perk, every single scope, random rolls setup sucks. It's just such a fucking slog. And like getting a drop and looking at it and is like, oh, well, this is just a garbage gun. Why would I use this? Because it's like I got a perk that's like one PvE perk for ammo reloading and another one like, oh, I get to increase the stability on my shotgun. Cool. Oh, I've got 2 stability boosting perks on my shotgun, and then like another thing for my sidearm that lets me reload faster when I'm crouching. Like there was too many possibilities. Like anyone who spent any time re-rolling a shotgun or a sniper rifle in the House of Wolves era knows just how many possibilities there are. Just like the thousands and thousands of different combinations. We get all fixated on one of them. I hope they like rein it in and curate it so like any roll's decent.
Speaking of that era of House of Wolves, during the day that I was there, I stood up and when I was talking to Sandbox people in the room full of people, and I was like, the House of Wolves re-rolling was actually like the best time in D1 for like kind of having a path to avoid random rolls. Like you could put the time in and get the source to get what you want if you already had it. But I think it wasn't like, it didn't fit all that well, and it felt like too much of a cost to roll, and you ended up like there was a lot of perks. Like you said, there was a lot of perks in there. You would have to re-roll this thing a lot to get it right. But there was, I was like, specifically, I was like, I want a path. Like if I could have a path through other means to get what I want, if I've sourced it, or get lucky and have it drop the way I want it, those sound good. So who knows? Maybe mods are the solution for something like that. Or maybe it's just within the Masterworks build. Like maybe there's an option to re-roll a perk in that section if you Masterwork it.
I have never been so broke in Glimmer, in moats, in every possible resource as I was broke during the House of Wolves era.
That was the era that, like, obviously that got me into it, because I was going to the playbook to be like, what's the perfect roll for this gun? I need to know. And I know you liked it.
That's true. That's true. I did craft a guide or two back in that era. I hope it is a little more curated and a little more like, I guess that like part of it is just like, I don't want to get a gun to drop that I've been waiting so long for and just have it be like, oh, this is a dookie roll. I should just use any other SMG instead. I don't want that. And I also I genuinely don't want to lose the identity thing. Like, I don't think it's the be all end all, but being able to talk about Foggy Notion or Resonance 42 and have that be meaningful more than just like, oh yeah, that's the one with the slightly higher aim assist stat on it because everything else is randomized about it. I don't want to lose that. I think it's nice. I think it's that kind of identity is a cool addition. It shouldn't be the whole story, but if it goes away, I'll be sad. End of hot take. All right, enough of my bullshit. Let's talk about some more stuff for the summit. And hey, everyone was talking about Gambit. Everyone is currently talking about Gambit. What's up with Gambit?
So it's a mode where you play against both PvE enemies and a PvP enemy. I think the best description was it's like Puzzle Fighter, where you see what's happening with the other group and you're constantly trying to mess with each other.
What the hell's Puzzle Fighter?
Yeah, you don't know about Puzzle Fighter? Puzzle Fighter is like
Words with Friends?
No, it's like a match 3 Tetris-y kind of thing where they fall down, but it's 2 people head to head, and you're also playing with like Street Fighter characters, like it's part of that franchise, and they have different moves, and when you do your moves, you send more gems over to the other side. So you like have to time it and like wait for them to use this one thing they've both been like charging up on their character and that they've assembled on the board to like bait that out so you can counter with like a Tetris or with the straight piece that comes back. And it's like, yeah, back and forth. It's like, if you ever thought like, well, Tetris is fun, but I wish there was a way I could ruin someone else's Tetris game at the same time. It's that, which is kind of what Gambit sounds like.
Yeah, so think that, but Destiny, where you're constantly trying to build and take down like enemies, and then there's a chance that you could either focus all of your effort into taking down your boss, or you could be like, we're going to make sure we're going to send Bones through because Bones is the most effective PvP player on our team, and he's going to go mess with the other team. And whenever you get kills on the other team, you give more health to the Primeval, which is their big boss that they're trying to take down. Fun.
I think Gambit's going to be the coolest shit.
It's something that like that at the summit, the resounding feedback was like, this is something I could play a lot of. Like, I could just keep doing it over and over and over again because of the PvP aspect being so like PvP is random like all the time, and kind of throwing that into an environment with PvE in it where you're still interacting with the big bads of Destiny. You're not fighting against another Guardian. I think that's probably the coolest part. It's like that combo where you're like, oh, I'm being attacked. I'm being aggroed by this knight, but also crap. There's this guy coming through and he's trying to kill me.
And you can do it with a Better Devils that has Outlaw on it.
Yeah. You're constantly like proccing Rampage. So use that Rampage on the Guardian that broke through into your world.
All I have to say about Forsaken is that bows have been added to Destiny. My dream has come true. When my elf eyes saw those bows in that Vidoc, I shouted back to Aragorn that I was fucking stoked. But seriously, they look so good. There's a nice little Game Informer article. I think it's Game Informer, but it's sort of an extension of the Vidoc where they talk about the bows and they mention what went into it. And whenever that was made, they were a 2-shot kill in PvP. They are hit scan if you are fully charged. So you are fully taught and you release, but you can actually release sooner. You can do sort of like a half power shot, and those become projectiles and do less damage. But I think there's a lot of skill to be had in that, in the sense that you can fire your gun quickly or slowly or hold a charge. It's hit scan, it's projectile. That's crazy. I think there's a lot to learn there. And I don't know which weapon slot it's supposed to go in yet, but it is going to be in one of the 3 that I have. Full time, just absolutely. Oh, yeah. There's no world where I don't always use a bow.
I'm so happy to see a weapon type get added that is snipery, but it doesn't have that kind of tunnel vision scope thing, which is what really keeps me from sniping. The linear fusions have that. Like, I thought Queensbreakers was like a particularly satisfying version of that in D1 of being like clearly a scope, but you don't lose your
Fallen
peripherals-ish
themed expansion could possibly have a Queensbreaker's bow in it. I'm just thinking about that.
Possible.
And it's a Queensbreaker's bow.
Maybe that's what they mean by having a bow in every slot.
Oh man. And I think we also found out that it's a 2-shot kill. I forget who said that on Twitter. I think that makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, people would just be like pre-pulling their bow around a corner and then peeking out for 1 second to headshot someone with an open field.
Yeah, how loud is the bow? Because fusion rifles, you got that.
I hope it makes a funny like sound, like when it funks into a tree and it just goes. You just always hear that like wobbling sound. That'd be great. Yeah, I think it's got to be 2. But I was painstakingly working very, very hard at my day job. We're just like so focused on what I was doing at work. And just barely out of the corner of my eye saw some Gambit footage on YouTube. I don't know who posted, some guy, Mesa Sean or something like that. And I was watching it, and that's when I was confused, because we didn't know at the point you could be hit scan / projectile. But it looked like a crit was like, I can't remember the damage. I want to say a body shot on a Guardian, a pretty full pull, was 75. So, and then there was that exotic one that has 3, and that did 35 to the body times 3. So it's like almost 90. So I don't know. It doesn't even seem like it's got to be 2 crits. It almost seems like some of these bows were killing in 1 crit and 1 body, in which case definitely makes it a sort of a semi-auto sniper in terms of its damage and play space. But yeah, definitely much more comfortable in the short to medium range. I doubt short is really its go-to, but let's face it, the coolest thing is using a sniper in the short range. So there's so much playability with these.
I think bows are really going to reward people who can prioritize targets well. Imagine the next team fight that you're in, but one of the 4 people on your team is kind of in the back. They're staying behind cover. They're peeking out just long enough to identify a weak target and cleaning them up with a single bow shot. And just add that to the mix with every fight that you're currently having right now. That sounds both fun and also effective, and not as much fun to lose to, but that's why we're in this racket. Okay, well, we could clearly continue talking all night about this. We do have a fantastic interview coming up, so we got to leave some time for that. But we cannot move on without talking about the 9 new subclass paths that we're getting. Oh my God, this there's a lot of stuff here. Should we lightning round these? Does that make sense?
Yeah, because we don't really know how they function more than David's sound effects on the Vidoc.
Very satisfying.
That's about as much as we know.
I will say that Dawnblade was the biggest, whoa for me, because when they I had someone describe it to me at breakfast the next morning, it was like, oh wow, there's a healer in Destiny 2 now. That's cool. I never really thought of that possibility, and this is why Claude is an amazing person, because he's thinking up all these things, and I almost every single one I'm like, oh, I would have never thought about that as an option. So you kind of just slam your sword in the ground, gives healing, gives bonus damage. I think it can hurt enemies if they waltz into it. And you can throw grenades and heal your friends.
This is the countdown round ender super right here.
Yeah, or capture the point.
Sure. I just love the idea of throwing little healing grenade Orbeez to your buddies. That is straight up new support class territory that we've gotten Night Stalkers as they've got a good defensive super and the smoke slows people down and you're helping your team. But no, this is actually helping your teammates more than just, dropping a rift.
On to the next one. What's the next one?
Let's talk about Striker. Striker's got that little what's the death from above perk now?
So that's where people were confused, because I think people saw it in the Vidoc and were like, whoa, it's death from above again. Sorta. It's more of a missile that you can control through the air like Iron Man. There's a lot of Iron Man references.
And also, you're the missile.
And also, the melee is the old death from above animation.
Yeah, like a mini Fist of Havoc.
Which you can do whenever your melee is charged. It does use your melee charge, so if you hit nothing, it's not like a normal punch where you can keep that charge. But you slam to the ground in the old animation, and that's pretty cool. It's got a little bit of an AoE damage, and I think I'm just going to be doing that off of like really high jumps. Just also, anytime I get the chance, just flying down when I could just fall.
Superhero landing.
Yeah, anyway. James Cameron would hate it.
Also, as you fly through the air as a missile, you're like crackling with arc energy, and you hurt people as you go by. So like, if you're not directly hitting someone, you're hurting people as you go by.
I'm just imagining like circling someone like a shark, slowly burning them down. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Well, we've gotten these written down in a certain kind of order. Let's just keep rolling with it. Night Stalker. What is up with Night Stalker?
You turn invisible. You see enemies through walls.
What?
And it plays kind of like Blade Dancer. You can turn re-invisible. So.
Yeah. What? Can I just get a little sample of that, Andrew? Can I just get that? All right, so you do this. What? There's just that little what? Oh, that was perfect. Okay, continue.
What? So
True Vanguard perfectly talked about it at breakfast, and he was like, what I did was popped my super before I went through the portal in Gambit and just waited by the thing that they deposit all the motes into. And then came uninvisible and cleaned up everyone. And then left.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And like, thank God Night Stalker is getting like a proper aggro subclass path, because like we're all getting a little bit tired of that one tree with Keen Scout on it. All right, Sunbreaker. The old Swain classic.
Giant hammer that acts like a giant melee, like real close. Big swing. You can slam it on the ground and create a fire tornado.
Oh, sure. Of course. Naturally. Okay.
Duh.
Voidwalker.
Weeb subclass. Just blink around. Nothing personnel, kid.
Let them come.
That one looked
That's
so
one I didn't get
cool.
we didn't really get to talk about at the summit, but it was in the Vidoc.
Stormcaller.
Also not it at the summit, but we saw it in the Vidoc, and it is like another Iron Man subclass where you hold your hand out and a beam of energy comes out of it. Arc energy.
Like, you can't really ignore the fact that like Destiny kind of reflects the world of pop culture that it exists in. Like, I think we needed another Avengers movie for these to be the next subclass pass.
Sure.
What about Sentinel?
They're keeping it very hush. We didn't talk about it at the summit, nor did we see any of it in the Vidoc.
Gunslinger.
Lots of knives.
Oh, this is like I put together a knife build the other day just because I wanted to see, like, is it possible to actually, like, is there any reason to use that bottom tree? Is it possible to chain knives? And also, Gunslinger is the only subclass that can have 3 solar melee perks. And I realize I just hate D2 knives. So yeah, give them a little love and give me a lot more of them. I like it. Arcstrider.
It's got like a spinny staff that reflects damage. I don't know if that's everything about it, but they're definitely what they were talking about at the summit was that you couldn't inspect the subclass. You only got to kind of determine what was in it by playing it. So there's probably some little nuances that people did get to discover that you would only be able to tell by inspecting it. So,
oh man. Okay. We gotta draw a line in this thing eventually. We got to get to this interview. This is a fantastic interview, by the way. Stick around for this.
We already did it.
A long time coming. Swain, any closing thoughts?
I mean, I hope they do this summit again, because it was nice to be in a very large group of people that were all kind of working towards giving good, constructive feedback. Twitter is not the place for doing it appropriately, nor it kind of helped a lot of people to do it face to face with someone and hear things like, hey, would you rather have SRL come back or all of this new stuff? And that was like something that actually happened. We got to weigh in on that. So it was a great involvement by the community, and I was surprised by it, to be honest.
Okay.
Bones, any closing thoughts? Yes, I would love to get the bows and for them to drop and for them to have good rolls and for them to be in my inventory immediately. And that's really all I care about at this point. And also, fuck Aldrin. That's it.
I'm sorry about that, bud.
I will find you and I will kill you.
And we will reset the level and do it again and just keep killing you until it feels better.
All right. Well, it is time for an interview, which means it is time for a thing. Who wants it?
Musical break. Musical break. Break me up. The musical break.
That Kit Kat bar.
Out here dripping, musical break.
We got music coming to you this week, straight out of Perry County, Pennsylvania. This is Meet At Sundown, their 6-song EP, Reborn. Go check them out. It's meetatsundown.bandcamp.com. And hey, if you're a musician, we want to hear your music. We would love to play it on the show. It all starts when you send an email to crucibleradio@gmail.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. You are now joining us for our interview where we talk to people in the Destiny community who are doing interesting, exciting, and engaging things. And not to disappoint, this week we have a very special guest joining us. You might have seen him on Reddit. You might have seen him on YouTube, secretly starting all of the trends that everyone immediately gloms onto. We've talked about him a ton on the show. We're so excited to finally have him. Special kid, dude. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going good. How are you? How was how's your last week in Destiny? What have you been up to? What are you playing?
Man. I've been doing a lot of Sunbreaker a lot, actually, because yeah, I wanted to start a new subclass. Like I like to play around with subclasses that a lot of people don't use and try to figure out the ins and outs of it. Mm-hmm. So I was doing Dawnblade and then Arcstrider, and then I went onto the Sentinel for a little while, and I figured it's time to do another montage. So I went to this. I think I tried the Night Stalker a little bit. I didn't like it that much, especially I think it was a bottom tree, the one with you can shoot like a lot of bows out at the same time. Mm-hmm. It wasn't working well, so I think I finally landed on the Sunbreaker. So working on that right now.
I'm excited.
So, yeah, if we've referred to your content before, but listeners, if you're not sure what we mean specifically, Special K, you do this really great thing where you take a subclass, specifically a subclass tree, and you display all of the abilities it has in a very cool sort of like action movie style montage. So it's not just, hey, here's me being good and sniping people in the face. It's watch me use this subclass in a specific way. So when you do play the Sentinel, we see how you use that shoulder charge effectively and stuff. And they're really, really cool. But I think they if anything, they should be used as advertising for Bungie, because it's like, hey, this is how you play the subclass. So while it's flashy and fun, it's also like a great way to learn each of those trees. And like you said, ones that people don't really gravitate to, right?
Yeah, I tend to go towards the ones that people think are kind of underpowered. Mm-hmm. So like I started with the Dawnblade, and that's when Destiny 2 launched, right? And I think
this is not go fast, Dawnblade.
Yeah, exactly. It's
go slow.
It got a really good buff after that patch, but before that, a lot of people like downplayed the class, and me, I thought to myself, because I played Destiny 1 for the whole 3-year time that it was on, and I knew that the Sunsinger was always the favorite class of Bungie. Like all the Bungie devs always played that one. Throughout the 3 years, it was always the most powerful class. Like it always had like the most interesting things. Like they gave it self-res, they gave it fusion grenades. Like they always had the most powerful stuff in there, you know? So when they made the Dawnblade, it didn't make sense to me that it became the weakest subclass in the game. So I kind of dissected it, looked at like all the individual parts of it and said, you know what, there's a specific way that Bungie wants us to play with it. And I figured it out and made it my own. And then everybody else started to do that as well, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, this video, I mean, I think a lot of your videos have been pretty inspiring to me in the sense of like, you make me want to go play this class. But one thing I appreciate is that you read the perks, right? Mm-hmm. Like no perk goes unexamined. For Attunement of the Sky, there's this Heat Rises perk. Airborne kills recharge your grenade and melee energy.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing where I think a lot of people like, you know, the first time they unlock the class, they might have read it. And then when they experience that perk, it's like, well, okay, if I happen to be in the air when I get a kill, I'll like, oh wait, my grenade melee came back. When did that happen?
Yeah.
And you really took it to heart and said, okay, if I was going to design a play style around this that was really trying to get the most value out of that perk, what would that look like? And I think you got it right. Like it's not just, you know, flying around doing the same things you always do. It's really working to make use of that perk. Exactly.
So I think the way that I did that is I apply this technique called strategic thinking to a lot of the things that I do. And what that means is whenever you see a problem or or anything like a solution that you need to make, you always go back to the root of what's going to fix that problem. So when I looked at the Dawnblade, basically they want you to use a subclass from the air. But the thing is, all the weapons in the game are inaccurate from the air, right? So then I took a step back and I said, okay, which guns are accurate from the air? And it's basically SMGs and hand cannons in a sense, right? So when I applied that technique, basically I made sure that I was always using an SMG on my subclass and basically just floating around in the air and just, you know, shooting people from the sky, right? And there was that aspect to it. There's another aspect to it where I think when Destiny 2 launched, a lot of people were complaining about the speed and how everybody feels slow and clunky, right? So that's when I took a step back as well. I said, you know what, let me see if I can add on some things like weapons or armor, specific armor pieces. And what I had done was I had put on the transversive steps and I had put on a lightweight weapon at the same time. And you'd be surprised how fast you're actually going to feel if you just do that. You don't even need to be high mobility. Like just put those two on and you're going to feel really snappy like back in Destiny 1. So, yeah.
One thing I really liked from your video about this was that, you know, you talk about sort of having an in-air play style and really choosing weapons that work well in the air. But another thing that you did was, there was one, you were on a clip from the video, you're on Vostok. I think you hit someone with a grenade and they're burning and you know they're going to burn out from the damage. And so right before they die, you jump up into the air.
Yeah.
You can't see them. You're not line of sight with them, but just to try and proc that perk.
Exactly.
That's very clever.
I feel like Destiny 2 was kind of built for this kind of thinking, like deep builds of different subclasses paired with exotic armors and weapons, and kind of like finding where your play style is. But unfortunately, not everyone wants to think that strategically, so they want that quick, like that's the one to pick. Don't have to think it. Just go in and like, you know, ape on everyone like birds.
That's good to ape. Well, so I'm curious. Do you think that there are different, like out of all the different subclasses and paths we have, do you think that there are some that kind of lend themselves to this sort of like very deep strategic kind of play versus others that are just like, well, this is a solid all-arounder. You don't have to worry too much about it. Good passive perks. Just go out there and have fun.
Yeah, I think so. So initially, like I said, I made the 3 montages. I did the Dawnblade, then I did the Arcstrider, and then I did the Sentinel after. And I was thinking which one I wanted to do next. And I wanted to use a subclass that had a lot of complexities within the skill tree. And the one I automatically went to was the Night Stalker. And there was a bottom tree where you can shoot multiple bows. But basically, I gave it a shot. I went with that for about a week or two, and I just couldn't make it happen. Like I have to say it bluntly, like that skill tree just doesn't work in PvP. You'd think that you can be accurate with the bows and shoot them like as many, like you hit them accurately against your opponents. It just doesn't work, you know? So I kind of gave up onto that one. And then I leaned over to the Sunbreaker, and there's 2 skill trees. I don't remember what they're called, but the one that I went towards initially was the one where you have sunspots everywhere. And that one intrigued me a lot because basically when you proc a sunspot, if you stand in it, you get your abilities back really quick. So I was doing that, and literally I would just kill a guy with my grenade or with my melee or whatever. He'd burn out, and there'd be like a sunspot. Basically, I would just stand in there for like 5 seconds and get almost all my abilities back, and then I'd move on to my next opponent. But I kind of gave up on the skill tree because of that melee bug that's there. I don't know if you guys know about it.
You gotta use the melee bug.
Oh my god! Yeah. So basically, when you hit a guy with your melee, what'll happen is sometimes they won't take damage, but they'll just start burning. And so it was happening like 8 out of 10 times. So I kind of gave up. And
I thought you were talking about the bottom one has the unintentional solar wind built into it. But when I talked to Claude at Bungie, he was like, yeah, some things we just leave in, even though they're not intentional. And that's definitely one of them.
So you're saying you're not supposed to punch people across the map, but that just happens.
No, it just happens to be a perk. And he said it's specific. It's specifically when they are off the ground and above you.
I see. Huh.
So you can punch people away from you, but it's gotta be a very specific situation. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, that explains why. Like I think I punched Drewski one time and he went flying splat into a wall. He's like, what the heck happened there? You know, because we were playing Rumble and that happened. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, so basically what the bug was when you punch a guy, they just won't take any damage and they'll start burning. And I was losing a lot of engagement, so I kind of gave up on that skill tree. And I went to the top one with basically has a shoulder charge there, and then the hammers that explode everywhere. And let me tell you, that's really powerful. Like, I think in the entire game, it's the most powerful super to counter other supers, in my opinion. So I think it can make for a good montage with a lot of fireworks in it, you know?
I imagine you're working on it.
At least in my experience, the people use Sunbreaker, they're like, oh man, like the top tree is so short. But in reality, you end up like a lot of times with like 3 kills from it. And that's a pretty good average when it comes to using your super.
There's one time what happened was, I think my opponent popped Golden Gun and I was just around the corner. And what I did is I just shot the hammers at the floor in anticipation of the guy arriving there. And basically the explosion just killed him. Like I didn't even hit him directly, you know? So there's a lot of creative things that you can do with the hammers just to get the drop on your opponent, you know?
Hey everybody, Birds here. Sorry to interrupt the show, but today I've got a request for our American listeners. If there's one thing that we can all agree on, no question, it's that we got to stick up for kids. As a community, we've raised millions of dollars for St. Jude's and other charities to help children. And we can all agree that there's nothing in this world that justifies hurting children, and that good people need to come together to protect kids at any cost. But right now, on U.S. soil, families are being broken up, and children are being taken from their parents, little kids taken from their parents and put into camps by the thousands. This is happening right now. And unless we do something about it, it's going to keep happening. I know some people are going to be upset that we've interrupted our video game show to talk about this. I know that like politically, we don't all see eye to eye. We've got different thoughts on immigration policy. That's not what this is about. It's about doing what's right for kids, for all kids. And so, look, it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter who you voted for. Whether you're a parent, whether you're someone's aunt or uncle, or whether you're just someone else's child, this one counts. We need to do what's right by children. And so I hope you'll join us. This is so easy. It's so fast. Just go to crucibleradio.com. We've got a banner up at the top of the page. You can't miss it. Click a link. And in minutes, you'll be connected to your congressperson and ask them, demand of them that they stop this practice of separating families. There's no reason for it. You can call, you can send an email. We've got a little script there, short, to the point, no funny business. We all need to do our part on this. This one counts. Kids matter, and we got to protect them. So I hope you'll show up. I hope you'll join me. I did it. Bones did it. Swain did it. It's so easy to do. Just go to crucibleradio.com, click the link, and go from there. This one matters. Please take a moment, pause the show, get this one done. Thank you. Well, I want to keep talking through some of these findings that you have, but before we do that, I want to get a little bit of sort of a sense of history. I mean, you clearly have a very I mean, it makes me kind of sad to say this, but an unusual approach to trying to tackle a game like this that's not just based around sort of gun skill and movement, kind of the basics. Tell me a little bit, just sort of, how did you get your start in gaming? How did you get into Destiny? And have you always sort of looked at video games as a puzzle to be solved in this way?
How do I say this? So basically, I started with Halo. This was back in Halo 2. I played that. I didn't really play it competitively because I didn't have high-speed internet back then. So I was on those 56K dial-up modems. So all I had was split screen, right? But after that, Halo 3 came, and I just kept playing Halo for a while. And then me, obviously being a Bungie fan, I got Destiny, and I just stuck through it. Even when the Halo, what was it called? Halo Master Chief Collection came out. Halo 5, I don't know. There was just nothing that could pull me away from Destiny. And really what I just loved about the game was logging in and being able to try different weapon customizations, trying a different loadout every day. And that's pretty much where I am right now, Like there'll definitely be a meta. Like right now it's Graviton Lance and Vigilance Wing. I tend to gravitate away from that. I like to use other weapons and try to be a hipster, if that's what you call it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I mean, in Destiny 1, there was definitely a lot more configurability when it came to, what perks you would get on a gun, what perks you use, what perks you configure in your subclass. I mean, sort of comparing the two, do you think Destiny 1 had more depth than D2 or the other way around or similar?
No, it's a very interesting question. I think a lot of people would disagree with me on this one, but I think that the weapon system does have more depth in Destiny 2, but it lacks something big time. And again, this is me thinking strategically again, and just going back to the root of a problem, right? Destiny 1 system to me was phenomenal. I liked it. I love the random rolls. But when you think back more from a management perspective, let's say you're a developer at Bungie, right? And you're looking at hard data. What you see that a lot of people are gravitating just towards one gun. So for example, on the hand cannon side, everybody was just using either Ace Lunar or Palindrome, right? Mm-hmm. So that was a big problem, right? With the random rolls, basically everybody would just gravitate to the gun with the best base stats and then build around that. So I think what they did with Destiny 2 is they tried to make every single gun unique. For example, if you're going to run Better Devils, you're running the explosive one, right? If you're going to be using Dire Promise, that's the one that's made for spamming and being speedy, right? So I think they wanted to give every single weapon an identity. And I love that personally, but I do miss having that random roll where you can kind of customize your gun to make it feel like how you want it to,
Mm-hmm. So I guess bringing it back up to the present, I mean, that idea that people tend to gravitate towards one gun. A couple weeks ago on the show, I talked about sort of my Sentinel build and how I'd really adopted Foggy Notion as my SMG of choice. I don't have a hero's burden, but Foggy Notion is close. It feels really good. I was ready to masterwork it. And then I happened to see your post on Crucible Playbook comparing Resonance 42 and Foggy Notion. And Resonance 42 was one of those guns I must have dismantled 1,000 of them. I don't know if I ever put it on. But then I equipped it. I put the long range scope on it. I played with the perks, and instantaneously I knew I was never going back to Foggy Notion. And I guess I kind of am curious to know, sort of generally, how do you dig out these little hidden gems that people aren't talking about? And then specifically for these two, what kind of inspired this research that you did into comparing Resonance and Foggy?
Okay, so basically, I was looking for another SMG to use because I think I was just using New City, and I wanted to use something different, and Foggy Notion just didn't feel good to me. And so when I looked at the Resonance, I saw that it had that special scope on it that none of the others have on it. And it said medium zoom instead of short zoom. So I thought to myself, if it's a medium zoom, that means your range technically is going to go out a bit further, right? And so that it kind of intrigued me in a sense where I wanted to test it out and see, is it in fact the highest range SMG in the game? And it turned out to be that was the case, right? But again, it goes back to like thinking strategically. I think you guys saw my guides there on Truth Teller and O-Rings Mall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So basically, nobody was using that gun back in the day. And then again, I looked at the gun from the ground up. I saw basically it was a grenade launcher that's one shot. It has extremely high velocity, a pretty good blast radius. So you think to yourself, okay, you can't kill a guy with it. But then Bungie added this perk called concussion grenades on it. So basically, I just took the grenade launcher, started practicing around with it. And I noticed when you hit a guy with that, they basically freeze. Like their screen's going to turn gray and they will not be able to move. And in some instances, it'll actually throw their reticle up into the sky. And so then I figured out, okay, that's how you're supposed to use it. You shoot him and then you clean him up with your primary weapon, you know? So I think it's basically just looking at the weapon, and I think Bungie has a specific purpose for every single weapon, and you got to figure that out, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think I can thank you specifically. Like I am completely addicted to Aura-Wings Mall. That is my go-to.
So is everyone else now. My goodness.
Yes, but I liked it slightly before everyone else. You guys, I liked it way after Special K put out his video on it.
You two both deserve credit. I was thinking about that today, realizing I ran into so many single shot grenade launchers when I was like, this just wasn't happening 2 weeks ago. And that's all it takes is just a little bit of digging and going like, I wonder if that works. And when it does, everyone else who dies to it goes, what is that? What did they just do? I need that. Give me that. And that's how it spreads.
I have to suspect that the addition of the Rumble playlist did a lot for those lightweight grenade launchers because it is tougher to use it effectively in teams because, you know, if it's a 3v1, even if you manage to hit all of them with a concussion, the odds are good you're not going to be able to clean all three of them up. Odds are good that you're going to get killed in the process. But in Rumble, where it's mostly one-on-ones, and you can shoot people from behind cover without sort of making line of sight with them, yeah, definitely I saw it as the Rumble kind of emerging meta first before anywhere else.
I'll have to add, though, I do think it is a little bit too powerful right now for Rumble.
I would agree.
It's broken. Like, I was playing a guy yesterday who got me so tilted. And I kind of felt bad after what I did to him. But basically, like this guy was winning games 25-5 in Rumble every single time. And basically what he would do is just use that grenade launcher, control the power ammo. And you know, I think the brick gives you about 8 shots now, right? So it's just like rinse and repeat, right?
Yeah.
It was, oh my God, I got so tilted. I shut my game off. Oh my God. But yeah.
Well, so I want to go back to something you mentioned kind of offhandedly there that I think is worth probably talking about a bit more. So you mentioned the long-range scope on Resonance. And this one, I think I'd never really, I kind of had all the pieces in my brain, but I'd never really put them together until I read your post. And I think I kind of realized that, like definitely when I'm looking at what are the available scopes for use on a gun, I'm thinking, all right, I want something snappy. I want something with really high handling, and I want something low zoom, right? I'm thinking kind of like a sniper rifle mindset, right? I don't want to get all tunnel visioned in. I want something that I can use at close range. It's real responsive. And like in general, that's not bad advice. Like that's a pretty good rule of thumb to use.
Yeah.
But for SMGs, it's different because SMGs are so close range anyways. You're actually trying to push them out to like slightly farther range. But then you talk about this specific thing that Zoom does, that you can look at the range bar, you can look at perks that boost your range, like accurized rounds or ricochet rounds, but that doesn't take into account the effect that Zoom has. Can you talk about Zoom a little bit?
Exactly. So your range bar is going to tell you one thing, right? So let's say you take Hero's Burden and the Resonance. I think the range bar is almost the same on the two. Maybe it's slightly higher by like a millimeter. But the fact that the Zoom has a higher multiplier on it, specifically for the Resonance, it's going to reach further out. And this doesn't apply just to SMGs. Like, for example, I don't know if do you guys know the pulse rifle? I think it's called Requiem 45 or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the one with Zen Moment. It's brand new. Basically, it has the same scope on it. And when you put that one on, the gun literally just becomes a laser beam. And I was watching a video actually of, I think Cool Guy made it just today or yesterday. And he said exactly the same thing. Like the range goes out to like 50 or 60 meters. It's crazy.
Pay attention to your scopes. We definitely saw in D1 a lot more sort of guides in the playbook sort of talking about things like zoom, measuring specific zoom values for all the scope. I think maybe that's slowed down a little bit in the D2 world. But I'm curious, you mentioned Cool Guy and some of the info we know about scopes has sort of gotten kind of passed around or linked around on the internet. Where do you go to learn? I mean, what's the cutting edge for you, and who inspires you to do your own investigation?
I look at a lot of videos. I mean, Cool Guy is obviously one of them. There's Aztec Cross. Everybody in the Destiny community makes a lot of interesting videos, and I just take a lot of tidbits from them. Cammy Cakes in particular, I think I've been watching a lot of his videos, and he has a lot of commentary.
Daily commentary is pretty good.
Yeah. I wasn't too interested in that, but once I started watching those, I was like, wow, some of the stuff that he says and the reasonings why he makes specific plays it's actually quite interesting, So I'll take a lot of combination from that, but I'll also read into the perks a lot. So when it says short zoom, it means it's a short zoom, right? You have to take it literally. And when the Resonance has that medium zoom scope, it means that you're going to be going further out. And then there's other guns that have like a long zoom. So that's going to multiply your range even further. But long zoom, obviously, it's not the best to use because then I think your reticle becomes a bit more shaky. It becomes a bit more prone to flinch as well. So, yeah, I just read into everything a lot.
Yeah, I think there's this. I mean, even this show, people listen to find out more and find out what's Special K working on, and when he's on the show. But I think it's like there's such an amazing wealth of information externally. Watching Fallout test shotgun ranges and talk about down to the RNG pellet spread and stuff. You're like, that's amazing, but it's almost like we have forgotten to now just open up the game, inspect that thing. What do these three things mean? And I know I like that little green boost to my range, but what are they really doing and what do they say? And it sounds like you've just managed to remember that there's a lot of perk descriptions and stuff, but really, really figure out what they mean, because those short little descriptions, they're like little codes to solve sometimes. Look at ricochet rounds. We didn't know it stretched a range by 3 meters until, I don't know, it was like 4 months into the game. So,
yeah. So what you're saying, I think you can go even further and make builds around it. So there's one I was thinking about making for Stormcaller, which I've made it. I just haven't played with it yet. But do any of you guys play Stormcaller sometimes?
Not even sometimes.
No? Yeah, I find the Stormcaller lost its identity from Destiny 1 a bit. I really wish Bungie like gives it a little buff. But the top tree, the one that basically lets you use Ionic Blink and everything, if you look at the 4 perks, basically, one of the perks, it chains your grenade damage. Another one of the perks chains your melee damage. And I think the third perk says if you pop your super while your abilities are up, you get all your health back or something like that. So when you're making a build around this, you need to make sure that the mods that you use are all ability mods. Like a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll put mobility, resilience, or recovery. When you're looking at this, you really need to put ability mods. So what I did was I had 2 arc grenade, 2 arc melee, and I think I had 1 reload mod or something like that, Because that way, if you constantly have your abilities up, you're actually getting to use them and taking full advantage of what the subclass has to offer, So that's just another example of reading between the lines and creating a build around it,
Yeah, well, and I'm sure that sort of feels underwhelming when someone's like, well, let me try this out. And they just equip their default, high recovery warlock gear and aren't really thinking, well, how do I get the most out of this? Well, that's a really good point.
So I'm kind of curious to know what your view is on our sort of 3 core stats. Certainly with Go Fast, mobility got a big boost. I've definitely gotten used to having high mobility on my Hunter, for example. Is that something that, you kind of have a certain stat that you're always going to try and max out? Is there like a resilience threshold that you're trying to hit? Does it really just depend on sort of what the build is and what the subclass is? Sort of talk me through what your thought process is there when you're picking your mods and deciding whether or not to prioritize those stats.
Yeah, sure. So in the past, I used to run with about 6 resilience. I know that with the recent update, a lot of things have changed and it's not the optimal one. I'm speccing a lot for mobility now, specifically because I'm using a Titan.
Can I just mention, when we first saw your Arcstrider video and you were running the Crucible set with 10 mobility on it, I think there was like a collective gasp heard around the Crucible radio headquarters.
Why?
That anyone, because I think we'd just gotten into the mold that I think a lot of the D2 community shared of that first version of mobility was kind of a dump stat, right? Like recovery is so important and you feel recovery right away, right? When you're sitting there for multiple seconds waiting for your health to come back. You feel resilience when you survive something that you think, oh man, I just barely made it out of there. That it was easy to kind of overlook mobility. I've completely sort of changed my view on it, but definitely credit to you there for sort of going outside the mold with that approach and so early on in sort of the days of Arcstrider and D2.
Yeah, well, obviously, I think you guys know the reason why I did that, though, right?
I mean, that was sort of like a dueling build that was kind of based around that.
So kind of, yeah, but the reason is because I wanted to keep my recovery low. Because on the way of the wind, basically what happens is if you're recovering, your abilities are charging faster. So if I stay in the red longer...
This guy.
Yeah, come
on. So if I'm in the red longer, that means I'm getting my abilities back faster. So basically that was the whole purpose behind it.
This is what I'm talking about. This is why I want to have you on the show. That's that's crazy, but it makes a certain kind of sense. Okay, I have another question. We've been talking a lot about loadouts, and I want to come back to this topic, but I think there's something to be said for just sort of core gameplay, right? You're going into quick play, you're going into Rumble, you're going into trials, and you want to win, and you're certainly playing for your loadout. But you can't replace just a certain amount of skill when it comes to, playing a shooter. You mentioned sort of Cammy Cakes' gameplay videos. I'm curious to know sort of what your strategic approach is to looking at your performance in a game and how you try and improve just mechanically as a player.
I think that's one of my weaknesses, actually. I don't invest enough time in making myself better strategically. Like, for example, I barely know the callouts for many of the maps. I think that's something I definitely need to work on. And I know your website, I think, has all the callouts and everything, but I think that's definitely something I need to work on. I need to play a lot more games with teammates where we do scrims and stuff like that, just to get my game to the next level. But yeah, if I were maybe just to elaborate on that, if I were wanting to improve my game, I think what I would do would be to play a lot with more teammates and stuff and play a lot more competitive games. For example, the competitive playlist or trials. I kind of put that on the side though recently because, well, trials just hasn't been fun on the PC platform for the longest time. There was a specific time. Yeah. I remember there was a time where basically people were just dodging each other and you know what I mean? Like all the good clans, they would look at each other's friends list and try to dodge each other so that they play all the weaker players. And so it kind of got to that point, so I kind of stopped playing that and just play mostly casual or quick play or whatever you call it, right? But yeah, I think I need to get into those competitive game modes and just brush up a little bit,
Well, let's narrow it down a little bit. I mean, certainly you play some Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in Rumble, that's not as much of an issue, right? You're out there on your own. I just imagine that, if you came off a bad losing streak in Rumble, you wouldn't just say I guess I suck now. I'm not good anymore. You'd be systematic about it. I mean, what would your process be like to try and find the sort of the errors that you made or the places where specifically there's a mechanical skill of, using a controller, for example, that you just need to work on, or your decision making, sort of that kind of thing. How do you improve that stuff?
Yeah. So maybe one of the things I can say is weapon choice. A lot of people don't think about that and they'll just tend to run whatever loadout that they want. But you need to use the right weapon for the right map. And sometimes just because I want to be a hipster and I'll use stupid guns all the time, I take a step back and be like, you know what? I messed up that game because I wasn't using the right loadout. Like I can use an example for Vostok. If I'm playing Vostok, there's no way you can run it with a hand cannon and an SMG just because of all the long sight lines. And at the same time, if I'm playing Vostok, I wouldn't run it with like a scout rifle and an SMG either, because what that does is it leaves a long gap between what your SMG can touch and what your scout rifle is good at. So like that mid-range, you just can't tap into that as easily, you know? So like if I was playing Vostok, ideally I would probably run it with a scout or a pulse with a hand cannon, you know? If I was playing on Javelin, maybe a hand cannon SMG or a pulse rifle SMG. But really, like the weapon choice needs to be really careful if you want to perform well in a specific map.
It's wise. Very wise.
Yeah.
Well, Kay, you caught us on a good time because this is coming out after Forsaken has been revealed. We've got this 9-minute Vidoc and a bunch of other stuff. And we've been talking a lot about loadouts today. So we, of course, have to get your thoughts on the new weapon system. Everything can go wherever it wants, I guess. And this really, really opens up your opportunities to experiment. What are you looking forward to doing with the new system?
I think I'm going to be looking forward to the fusion rifles. I think that just like in the current meta, they're just not competitive. And the reason being is because everybody has power ammo and they're just like, you know, whipping grenade launches at you or rockets or whatever it may be, you know, or they'll have accuracy, you know. I think they don't have a place in the current game right now. And the fact that they're shuffling that around, I think I'm going to be able to play with fusions again because that was my my main weapon back in Destiny 1. Yeah.
You really are a hipster.
Yeah. But I loved Plan C and like, yeah, I was using fusion rifles all the time, you know, but I was a bit worried though initially when they said that they're going to change the whole loadout system. But I think playing over the last couple of weeks of Destiny 2, I kind of realized that the change needed to be made because the power weapons themselves are just not balanced properly, unfortunately. Like you can't stick play of the game in the same level as a regular shotgun or a fusion rifle. It can't work, you know? And in the end, there's always going to be that dominance of play of the game over all the other weapons, you know? So I think that the way that they're separating now, hopefully it can fix that issue. It is going to be a bit more hectic, I think, but you know, it'll be fun, at least.
So before we let you go, I want to know, is there any current sleepers that we should keep an eye out for, whether it's like a subclass loadout or like a weapon that you're really enjoying?
Yeah, actually, I made a list of a few of them, actually. So the first one is actually a Rampage build. So if you don't know, basically Rampage, if you proc it on one gun, it translates over to another gun if you ever switch to it. And that gun has Rampage built in as well. So let me explain. For example, let's say you have Huckleberry and Last Perdition, right? You kill somebody with Huckleberry, you're going to proc Rampage. If you switch your gun over to the Last Perdition, Rampage is going to stay active and you can use it with that gun as well. If you have a power weapon that has Rampage on it, you can do the same thing and swap over to that weapon and have Rampage on it as well. So there's a build that I was using recently. It was Huckleberry, Last Perdition. I think my shotgun was Perfect Paradox. It was either that or main ingredient. Like you can use one or the other, right? And it's really good for Rumble because you can clean up one person, and if there's another guy chasing after you, and he's a little bit far away or too close, you can change your weapon depending on whatever one that you need, right? So, yeah, Rampage is pretty good.
I like that. Well, and I'm just thinking like one thing that, I mean, because Rampage is tough otherwise because the perk it doesn't last for a long time, right? If you've just unloaded all of your ammo, you're not really going to experience the benefit of it. But that damage boost in a lot of ways can be a range boost. And so I wonder if, you just got me thinking, right? Like you get that first kill with Huckleberry, you've got some power ammo, or maybe you clean someone up with Huckleberry, and then you switch to your shotgun, and it's like your shotgun has just gained some additional range by having the Rampage perk active. Then you get a kill with it because it's a shotgun. It takes you just a sec. You switch to your Last Perdition, and now you've basically boosted the archetype on it, right? It's shooting at the same rate, but you're doing more damage. And at no point are you ever really stopping to reload and sort of losing that Rampage chain.
Exactly. It works really well with the high recovery build though. If you're running low recovery, it's not as powerful as, for example, Kill Clip, because with Kill Clip, at least you can like take cover on the side, get your health back a little bit, and then proc it. With Rampage, it's a little bit harder, so you need to have a good amount of recovery at least, you know.
Yep, makes sense.
But there's another gun that I was using. I think I showcased it on one of my videos. It was the Wizened Rebuke, the fusion rifle from Iron Banner. So a lot of people aren't using that one. But basically, like the issue with fusion rifles, especially on PC, is it's really fast paced, and I find that personally, like with a mouse, if your opponent's really moving fast, I find it really hard to track. And the worst part about it is if your opponent sees that you have a fusion rifle out, they'll know and they're going to try and juke you right away. So I find that with the Wizened Rebuke, because it has that perk on it, I think it's called, I forget what it's called. It's the perk.
It's the Plan C perk.
Yeah,
right?
The Plan C perk, exactly. So basically you would confront your opponent. He's not going to know that you have your fusion rifle out because you'll have your SMG or your pulse rifle out, and then you just switch to it right away and then just finish him off, and they're not going to expect it, you know. And it's been working really great for me in Rumble. Yeah, not so much in quick play because there's a lot of other power weapons in play, but in Rumble it works really well.
All right. Well, I think hopefully everyone comes away from this deep in thought and realizing that there's really something to be said, even if it's not the most, you know, perfect meta all-purpose build, to seeing a possibility, going chasing after it, and when it works and when it clicks, and you're like, well, it's working a lot better than I expected it to. Feeling like you've really kind of you've solved a puzzle, or like you figured out some kind of secret. I'll just personally say, like, I definitely have just a couple inspirations in the Destiny world for sort of who inspires me to try a new build, or like, oh, that seems to be working, let me copy what they're doing. Those people are Drewski, Keen Koala, and you. You're putting out great videos, and you're turning me on to stuff that I get to then come talk about the show on. So thank you for doing what you're doing, and keep doing it.
Sweet.
We really enjoy it.
Yeah. Yep.
People should go find you on the internet. I'm not going to phrase it as a question. If you don't want to go find Special K Dude on the internet, you're making a mistake. Don't miss out. Find out about the sleeper coming up. Where can people find you?
So I have a YouTube channel. I post videos occasionally, not daily or weekly, but as I see something, I'll definitely post it. But my YouTube channel is Special K Dude. It's 3 words, so Special K Dude. I'll occasionally tweet as well. So, for example, if I made a video, if I want to say something, I do have Twitter. It's @SpecialKDude, all one word.
All right, hit that subscribe button. And I'm not just saying that. Like, when these videos come along, you want to get notified about them so you can get on this thing before it's a week later and everyone is using that same damn grenade launcher. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I think once this meta develops a little bit, we got to have you back on to tell us the new thing that we're missing out on. Thanks for talking.
I would love to, man. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I'm already checking my vault and I don't have a last perdition, so now I'm annoyed.
How many of those have you dismantled?
So many.
All right, everybody, that takes us to the end of the episode. This has been it's been a big episode. We got through a lot here. Hope you enjoyed it. Hey, go check out crucibleradio.com. We got a bunch of good stuff there. Hey, we had our first ever Crucible Radio faction rally in-house. Our clans showed down. We had some points. We had some tournaments. It is still going on, and we're going to keep on doing it. It was a very fun way to get to know folks and have a little bit of good times playing Destiny, if you know what I mean.
That's in our Discord, discord.gg/Crucible Radio. Come be a friend.
Jeez, that's Crucible Radio. And yeah, you can just like hang out there and talk to people and find people to play with on your system and time zone of choice. You can message with us. It is all available. And it's totally free.
Also,
Discord.
We have a sweet little section for our Patreon supporters. It's our members lounge, and you can be a part of that by supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/Crucible Radio.
When is our next Patreon night coming up where we play games exclusive with our patrons? When's the next one? Who's got the next one?
Well, I am doing one later this month on the 26th. We'll probably We might do movies, but we might also do some Destiny while we do movies. We'll see.
Yeah, we all watch movies together, and it's super hilarious, except for that one time we watched Attack of the Clones, and we all hated it by the end of it.
It's rough.
And we didn't talk to each other for a day.
Still solidarity.
I promise it will not be Attack of the Clones. It'll probably be something else.
Solid. All right. Anyway.
Good sell. Better than Attack of the Clones. Good sell.
You gotta check it all out. We're gonna be here right back next week.
Also, guys, happy 156 episodes. 3 years of episodes.
Was this it? Oh yeah. Da, da,
Da,
da,
da,
da,
da,
da, I'm stopping my microphone.
Da, 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 da,
You took your own grave. I live my heart in Dixie. You live too hot from cold. I live my heart in Dixie. You live too hot from cold.
Bruno Mars has had 3 different girlfriends he all thinks are named Angelique, but they're just different actresses wearing the same blonde wig. Bruno Mars's handlers took last year's birthday present, which was a python, away from him and replaced it with a turtle, and just told him that it evolved, and he seems to be going with it.
And they'll say it'll evolve again at level 30.
Yep. Bruno Mars puts ketchup on his sushi, and everyone around him acts like it's the most amazing idea in the world.
Bruno Mars doesn't know what month it is because he lives in LA.
Bruno Mars also doesn't know what's in sushi.
Yeah.
Just more ketchup.